The audience chamber was built to intimidate star systems, not mercenaries who had slept in cargo holds. Its ceiling rose like the inside of a hollow planet, latticed with glowing conduits that pulsed in time with distant generators. Holographic battle maps hovered above the floor, shedding cold light over officers in polished uniforms who argued in low, exhausted voices. Queen Savannah stood at the center of it all, one hand resting on the edge of her command dais, blue skin pale beneath the strain of weeks without victory. Her long ears angled back as another general listed lost fleets, burned corridors of space, names that would soon become memorials. The doors opened without ceremony. Kyle Dryden did not stride in. He limped, the kind of limp earned over years of ignoring pain, until pain made its own decisions. His armor was old, older than anything else in the room by centuries, its surface scarred and darkened, as if history itself had taken a blade to it. Power cables and modern seals had been grafted onto it, with little concern for elegance. It hummed faintly, as if annoyed to be awake. Kyle paused just inside the threshold, took in the glowing maps. The Queen, the silent turn of 100 eyes, and muttered to himself that he should have stayed on the ship. Savannah was mid-sentence when she saw him. The words simply fell out of her mouth, unfinished, drifting into the air like debris after an explosion. Her gaze locked onto the armor. The chamber seemed to narrow, sound draining away until there was only the faint whine of projectors and the soft, irregular clink of Kyle shifting his weight. One of her advisors cleared his throat. No one noticed. She stepped down from the dais. Protocol protested silently as she crossed the chamber, long ears lifting, then angling forward as if drawn by a gravity no one else could feel. Cal straightened out of instinct, then immediately regretted it as something in his back made a noise he was fairly sure was not meant to be audible. Savannah stopped a breath away from him, eyes fixed on the chest plate. Her fingers rose, hesitated, then touched the engraved surface. The chamber held its breath. "This cannot be," she said, voice barely more than a whisper. Her fingers traced the markings, ancient lines cut with a precision no modern tool could replicate. "These sigils belong to Theros the Unbroken." Kyle blinked. "That's unfortunate," he said, because his brain had chosen that moment to abandon him. "I was told it belonged to a scrapyard." Her eyes lifted to his face, sharp and searching. Up close, he noticed the fine texture of her skin, the way the light caught along the curve of her long ears. She looked young and impossibly old at the same time. "You wear this armor as if it were common plating," she said. "It mostly is," Kyle replied. "The left shoulder sticks if it's humid, and the knee joint squeaks when I run. I've been meaning to fix that." A ripple of disbelief moved through the gathered officers. Savannah did not laugh, but something in her expression shifted, attention easing by a fraction. 500 years ago," she said, "a human wearing this armor stood where you stand now. He turned the tide of a war my people were destined to lose." Kyle glanced down at his chest, then back at her. "I once turned the tide of a bar fight," he offered. "Different scale, I know." Against her will, a quiet breath escaped her that might have been a laugh. She stepped back, straightening, the weight of the room returning all at once. The generals began speaking again, voices urgent, overlapping. Prophecy, coincidence, tests, security concerns. Kyle felt the armor hum more loudly, as if amused. Savannah raised her hand, and silence fell like a command code. Her gaze never left Kale. "You will come with me to the armory," she said, "until I understand how legend learned to limp and complain about humidity." Kale opened his mouth, then closed it. He had salvaged the armor from a derelict warship years ago, half buried in vacuum dust and forgotten by history. It had kept him alive through jobs he preferred not to remember. He had never asked it where it came from. Now it seemed intent on answering. He nodded once. "Your Majesty," he said, "for the record, I didn't ask to be part of a prophecy." Savannah turned toward the exit, her long ears lifting with resolve. "Neither did my ancestor," she said, "and yet here we are." The armory lay beneath the palace like a buried memory, sealed behind layered force fields and doors that recognized bone structure, genetic markers, and authority in tones too low to hear. As they descended, Kale became aware of how quiet the palace truly was when stripped of ceremony. The hum of reactors, the distant vibration of ships lifting off from emergency docks, the whisper of systems trying very hard not to fail. His armor responded to it all, plates warming slightly as if listening back. Savannah walked beside him, unescorted now. That alone unsettled more guards than Kale's weaponry ever could. Her long ears shifted constantly, reacting to sounds Kale could not hear, and occasionally to thoughts she did not voice. The silence stretched until Kale felt compelled to fill it, a habit that had gotten him into trouble more often than firefights. "So," he said, gesturing vaguely at the descending platform, "do most of your historical legends end up limping into secure facilities? Or am I special?" "Most of them died dramatically," Savannah replied, "which you are actively failing to do." "Good," Cal said. "I've always hated expectations." The platform settled with a muted thud, revealing the armory in full. Racks of weapons lined the curved walls, some sleek and humming with modern energy cores, others dormant and ancient, sealed behind stasis fields. Light panels brightened automatically, washing over Kale's armor. The engravings reacted instantly, lines flaring with a soft internal glow that made several technicians freeze mid-step. Savannah stopped. Her breath caught, just slightly. "That," Kale said, looking down at himself, "is new." Scanners activated around him without being touched, drones unfolding like mechanical insects, lenses adjusting, sensors flickering through spectra Cal had only heard about in overpriced briefings. Data streamed across transparent displays. Alloy composition, unknown. Energy residue, anomalous. Temporal wear, inconsistent. One technician frowned. "This armor has been exposed to environments that no longer exist." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "It's been through some rough places." Savannah circled him slowly, eyes never leaving the plates. "Theros vanished during the final push of the war," she said. "No body, no wreckage, only this armor, lost to time. Or so we believed." Kyle shifted as she knelt to examine the knee joint. It squeaked faintly. She looked up at him. "I told you," he said defensively. "Humidity." For a moment, something close to a smile touched her lips before she masked it. She stood and gestured sharply. "Run a resonance test." The armory lights dimmed. A low-frequency pulse rippled through the space, vibrating Kale's teeth and making his armor hum in reply, not resisting but answering. Images burst into the air above them, ghostly echoes of battlefields, star systems burning, fleets locked in impossible geometries. Among them, a human figure moved, armor identical, motions precise and unyielding. Kyle stared. "Okay," he muttered. "That's definitely new." The figure turned, as if aware of being observed, then dissolved into static. The room exhaled. "This armor is keyed," Savannah said quietly. "Not to bloodline, not to species, to intent." Kyle scratched his chin. "That feels judgmental." One of the generals stepped forward, voice tight. "Your Majesty, this proves nothing. Anyone could wear it. It does not make him Theros." Savannah's gaze hardened. "I did not say it did." She turned back to Kale. "Tell me how you found it." He sighed, the sound echoing inside his helmet as it retracted automatically, seals releasing with a hiss. "Derelict ship. No markings. Drifting near a collapsed jump corridor. The armor was in a sealed compartment, still powered, still waiting. I needed protection. It didn't object." "Of course it didn't," she murmured. Kyle met her eyes. "I'm not your legend. I'm just someone who survives." She studied him, long ears tilting slightly outward, an expression her people reserved for truths that were inconvenient, but undeniable. "So was Theros," she said. "At first." Alarms flared suddenly, sharp and red. A voice cut through the armory. "Enemy movement. Border systems breached." Another line collapsing. Cal looked around at the ancient weapons, the glowing armor, the queen standing far too close to him. "If this is the part where destiny kicks down the door," he said, "I'd like to officially register my complaint." Savannah did not look away from the display. "You may file it after the war," she said. Then softer, almost to herself, "If we survive it." The armor pulsed once, steady and warm, as if it had already made its decision. The War Council reconvened in a chamber that had not been used for optimism in generations. Its walls were older than the palace above, layered with embedded star charts carved directly into the alloy, showing borders that no longer existed and enemies long turned to dust. Cal noticed immediately that someone had tried to clean his armor on the way in. Someone had failed. The ancient plates stubbornly retained their scars, as if offended by the attempt. Savannah stood at the center, long ears held high in practiced authority, though the tension beneath it was unmistakable. Around her, generals, tacticians, and analysts argued in clipped bursts, data streams flickering between them like weapon fire. Cal was placed slightly behind her, which he suspected was intentional, either as protection, symbol, or bait. Possibly all three. "The fleets will not rally around a coincidence," one general snapped. "Legends do not fire cannons." "No," Kyle said before he could stop himself, "but people who believe in them usually do." Every head turned. Savannah did not reprimand him. She only tilted one ear in his direction, a subtle invitation to continue. Kale cleared his throat. "Look, I don't know your Theros. I don't know your prophecies. I barely know how this armor still fits after 5 years. But I do know this. If your people think I'm something I'm not, they'll be disappointed. Probably loudly." A murmur rippled through the room. One strategist scoffed. "You admit you are not the one." Kyle shrugged. "I admit I'm bad at pretending." Savannah stepped forward, cutting off the rising argument. "You are wrong," she said calmly. "Legends are not what they are. They are what they do to others." She gestured and the chamber shifted. The carved star maps lit up, updating in real time, borders shrinking, enemy vectors advancing like a slow infection. Entire systems blinked amber, then red. Cal felt the armor grow warmer again, not reacting to danger, but to attention. Thousands of eyes across the Empire were already turning toward the palace. "The rumor has spread," an aide said quietly, "faster than our official channels." "Of course it has," Cal muttered. "It always does." Savannah looked at him sidelong. "You are remarkably calm for someone placed at the center of an empire's survival." "I'm not calm," he said. "I'm resigned. There's a difference." They moved through corridors afterward, deeper into the palace's operational core. Displays showed civilians evacuating orbital habitats, fighters scrambling, supply lines rerouting in desperate efficiency. Savannah walked with purpose, but her long ears betrayed fatigue now, drooping just slightly. Cal noticed, and for reasons he didn't examine too closely, slowed his pace to match hers. "You could still send me away," he said quietly. "Say the armor is a relic. Say the prophecy was misread." She stopped, turned to face him fully. "If I do that," she said, "my people lose hope. If I embrace it, we risk disappointment. Leadership is choosing which loss you can survive." Kale considered that. "You're very good at this," he said, her mouth curved faintly. "I am very tired at this." They entered a smaller chamber lined with projection nodes. At Savannah's command, an image formed, a human figure in the armor, standing beside an alien queen with long ears facing an impossible enemy. It was old, stylized, clearly symbolic. Kel stared at it. "I hate to tell you," he said, "but that pose is terrible for the lower back." She laughed then. Not a careful, restrained sound, but a sharp release that surprised them both. For a moment the war receded. The moment ended with a chime. Incoming transmission. Enemy forces had breached another corridor. Time was compressing. Savannah straightened, ears lifting once more. "Tomorrow," she said, "you will stand with me before the fleet." Kyle winced. "I don't give speeches." "You will not need to," she replied. "Just stand." He exhaled slowly. "That's how it starts, you know. First you stand. Then someone expects you to lead." She met his gaze, unflinching. "Then we will disappoint destiny together," she said. The armor pulsed again, steady and patient, as if it had heard worse plans and survived them all. The hangar deck stretched wide enough to swallow small cities, its curved walls alive with motion as crews rushed between towering cruisers and darting interceptors. Energy shields shimmered open and closed as ships lifted, slid, and vanished into hyperspace corridors that glowed like wounds in reality. Kale stood at the edge of it all, helmet tucked under one arm, watching organized chaos pretend it was under control. "Try not to look like you're about to escape," Sivena said beside him. "I'm not," Cal replied. "I'm calculating how far I could get before someone tackled me." Her long ears angled toward him, one lifting slightly higher than the other. And, disappointingly short distance, they stood on an elevated platform overlooking the fleet. Thousands of personnel filled the decks below, and more watched from ships, stations, and planets far away. Cameras tracked them automatically. Kel felt it immediately, a pressure behind the eyes like gravity shifting direction. The armor responded too, seams tightening, internal systems aligning as if preparing for impact rather than attention. Sivena stepped forward first. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. The hangar quieted as if space itself were listening. "Our empire stands at a threshold," she said. "Behind us, everything we were. Ahead, everything we may lose." Cal glanced sideways. "She's good," he muttered. "Quiet," she murmured back. "You're symbolic." He winced. She spoke of strategy, of sacrifice, of the reality of war stripped of poetry. Then she gestured toward Kale. The screens magnified him instantly. He saw himself reflected in 1,000 angles. Battered armor, scars left visible, expression caught somewhere between grim and deeply annoyed. "This armor," Savannah continued, "once belonged to a human who stood with us when extinction seemed inevitable. Whether fate has returned him to us or not is irrelevant. What matters is that hope has returned." The crowd stirred. Kyle leaned closer to her. "I feel like I should wave." "Do not wave," she said immediately. "I'm waving internally." When the address ended, the reaction was not cheers so much as resolve settling into place. Ships powered up. Orders flowed faster. Cal watched it happen, unsettled by the knowledge that his presence had altered probability curves he didn't understand. Later, much later, they found a quiet corridor overlooking open space. Stars drifted past like indifferent witnesses. Savannah rested her hands on the railing, ears lowered now, the weight of command no longer hidden. "You used me," Kyle said, not accusing. "Yes," she replied simply, "and so did they." He nodded. "Fair." She glanced at him. "You could still leave." He snorted softly. "Now, if I leave, they'll write songs about my tragic disappearance. Probably bad ones." "That is a risk," she said. They stood in silence for a while, watching a cruiser slip into hyperspace. Cal felt the familiar pull of danger approaching, the sense that the universe was lining up another bad day. "When this goes wrong," he said, "I want it on record that I suggested running." Savannah's ears lifted slightly, angled toward him in something like amusement. "When this goes right," she said, "I will ensure history remembers you complained the entire time." The armor hummed, content, as if enjoying the argument. The palace did not sleep anymore. It cycled through emergency modes, lights dimming and brightening in careful patterns, meant to conserve power and morale at the same time. Kel discovered this while trying, unsuccessfully, to sleep on a bed that adjusted itself every time he sighed. After the fifth adjustment, he gave up and sat on the edge, staring at his armor as it rested against the wall, silent now, almost innocent. "You've caused more trouble than I have," he told it quietly. "That's impressive." The armor did not respond, which somehow felt judgmental. He was midway through resealing a loosened plate when the door chimed. Savannah entered without ceremony, dressed not in royal attire, but in a practical command uniform, the kind designed for long hours and bad news. Her long ears were uncovered, angled slightly downward, fatigue no longer hidden behind formality. "You should be resting," she said. "I tried," Kyle replied. The bed fought back. She looked at the bed, then at him. "It does that." She moved closer, studying the exposed inner layers of the armor. "The restoration teams want to reinforce it with modern shielding." "And ruin its personality?" Kyle said. "Absolutely not." That earned a soft huff of amusement. "You joke," she said, "but they are concerned." "So am I," he admitted. "This thing has kept me alive because it expects me to move, not stand still and look important." Savannah considered that, ears lifting slightly. Then perhaps that is why it chose you. I didn't feel chosen, he said. I felt underpaid. The days that followed blurred together. Kel was tested, scanned, observed from angles he didn't know existed. Simulations ran endlessly, battlefields reconstructed from probability models, enemy fleets shifting like living organisms. Through it all, Savannah remained nearby, sometimes silent, sometimes sharp with orders, sometimes unexpectedly dry with humor that caught Kale off guard. During one simulation, Kale misjudged a maneuver and triggered a virtual annihilation event. That was not ideal, he said, as alarms blared. Savannah folded her arms. Theros destroyed 3 fleets in his first engagement. Good for him, Cal replied. I destroyed a projection. She smiled, brief and real, before the weight returned. Between preparations, the enemy advanced. Reports grew shorter, more urgent. Systems fell. Refugee numbers climbed. The empire bent but did not break, held together by belief as much as strategy. Kyle felt it whenever he walked the halls, glances lingering, hands touching the armor for luck, whispers that stopped when he turned. One evening, they stood together in the observation spire, watching a distant battle unfold as flickers of light far beyond the glass. Savannah's ears were angled toward the stars as if listening. I am afraid, she said quietly. Kale blinked. You're not supposed to say that. I am not supposed to feel it, she corrected. Yet here it is. He nodded slowly. Fear's fine. It means you understand what's at stake. She looked at him then. Really looked. And you? He thought of the armor, the prophecy, the impossible expectation pressing down on him. I'm afraid I'll survive here, he said, and have to live with whatever happens. That made her laugh softly, a sound edged with sadness. That is the most human answer imaginable. The next alert came without warning. Enemy forces had committed fully, abandoning caution for overwhelming force. This was the moment legends were built on, or buried under. Savannah straightened, every trace of hesitation burned away. It is time. Cal sealed his armor, feeling it lock into place like a final decision. As they walked toward the command chamber, he glanced at her. If this ends badly, he said, I want it known I preferred quiet jobs. She inclined her head, ears lifting with resolve. If it ends well, she replied, they will say you never wanted glory. The armor pulsed once, steady and sure, as the Empire braced for the storm. The battle did not announce itself with drama. It arrived as a series of quiet failures, a delayed response from a sensor array, a carrier that did not acknowledge a recall order, a stretch of space that went dark and stayed that way. Kyle felt it through the armor before anyone spoke, a subtle tightening as if the plates themselves were bracing. Around him, the command chamber filled with controlled urgency, voices layered over data streams that updated faster than fear could form. Savannah stood at the center, long ears lifted and rigid, eyes fixed on the unfolding chaos. She issued orders with precision, her voice steady enough to anchor those around her. Cal watched her and realized that at some point he had stopped thinking of her as a queen burdened by prophecy and started seeing her as someone who refused to let the universe decide things for her. That flank is going to fold, Cal said suddenly. Several heads turned. Savannah did not hesitate. Why? He studied the projection, instincts honed by survival rather than theory. They're baiting us, pulling fire where it looks weakest. I've seen this before, usually right before everything explodes. A general frowned. Our simulations. Lie, Kyle said calmly. Reality cheats. Savannah raised a hand. Silence. She studied the map, then nodded once. Adjust the formation. Follow his recommendation. The order rippled outward. Moments later, enemy fire tore through the space where their fleet would have been. No one spoke. Kyle exhaled slowly. I hate being right. The armor pulsed, warm and approving. As the battle intensified, Kyle found himself moving, not commanding, not posturing, but acting. He coordinated strikes, anticipated shifts, made decisions without thinking about whether they fit a legend. Somewhere in the chaos, he realized he was no longer trying to survive the war. He was trying to win it. When the enemy flagship emerged, blotting out stars, the chamber went still, its weapons charged, space bending under the strain. Sivena turned to Kale. This is where Theros stood. He looked at the projection, then at her. Then he had terrible timing. Before anyone could object, he interfaced the armor directly with the fleet network. Systems protested, then adapted. The ancient technology did not overpower the modern, it guided it, aligning movements, synchronizing fire in patterns that felt less like strategy and more like instinct. The flagship's shields failed. A collective breath was held, then released. The enemy retreated, not dramatically, simply left. Afterward, the silence felt unreal. Cheers erupted across channels, uncontrolled and raw. Sivena closed her eyes briefly, long ears lowering as the tension finally drained. When she opened them, she looked at Kyle with something close to wonder. "You chose," she said quietly. He shrugged, suddenly aware of how tired he was. Someone had to. Days later, the palace felt different, lighter, repairs underway, hope no longer whispered but spoken aloud. Kyle stood once more in the audience chamber, armor still scarred, still unmistakably itself. Sivena approached him, no throne between them now. "The historians will argue about what you are," she said. "Legend, coincidence, catalyst." Kyle smiled faintly. "Let them. I've never been good at labels." "And what will you do?" He looked at the armor, then back at her. "For once, I'll choose." She nodded, long ears lifting with quiet respect. "Then the prophecy is fulfilled," she said. "Not because you were destined, but because you decided to stay." Kyle turned toward the doors and then paused. "If another war starts," he said, "I'm charging consultation fees." Sivena laughed, clear and unburdened. As he walked away, the armor hummed softly, no longer leading him, no longer waiting. For the first time, it followed.